If you thought the world was about to end and the only way to survive was by following this man, would you listen? Because that's exactly what cult leader Sam Bateman led his followers to believe. Now exposed in Netflix's new doc, Trust Me, The False Prophet. August 2022 in Flagstaff, Arizona. Police pull over a man driving a small trailer with 3 young girls in the back. Ages 11, 12, and 14, with several more in the car's cab. The girls are seen on the highway holding the trailer doors shut with their hands. The girls don't tell the officers much, but they're all wearing wedding rings, which immediately sparks red flags. Soon, police learn the man they're traveling with is Sam Bateman, and he's part of a federal investigation prosecutors would describe as a child sex ring spanning across multiple states. Police soon learn this is an FBI investigation based out of a group in Colorado City, Arizona, a town historically known for FLDS presence. What they're uncovering is not random. It's a structured group of adults and families moving together, relocating between Arizona, Colorado, Utah, and even Nebraska. They're placing underage girls with Sam Bateman and other older men as part of a spiritual marriage. These girls are taken out of school, taught that obedience is their highest renowned quality, and reduced to what prosecutors can only describe as sex slaves. Bateman was involving mothers and their daughters in spiritual marriages with him, often taking other men's wives as gifts from his followers. He would orchestrate group sex acts with minors, sometimes under the guise of a spiritual connection or celebration, other times as punishment or what he called atonement. Prosecutors say at least 20 young women, 9 of them confirmed as minors, were involved in this spiritual marriage to Sam Bateman. To understand how Bateman was able to do this, you have to understand the system where he was brought up. The FLDS isn't just a belief system. It's a community of religion based around the idea that one person speaks as a prophet for God. And this authority isn't abstract. This prophet controls marriages, family dynamics, and most of all, access to salvation. Under Prophet Warren Jeffs from the 90s to the mid-2000s, that control grew extensively. He assigned wives, including underage girls, to much older men. He removed children from parents, he removed schools from the FLDS community, and took over 80 wives himself, many of them minors. In 2011, Warren Jeffs was finally convicted of child sexual assault and sentenced to life in prison. But instead of that system collapsing, he continued to guide followers from jail.
We love you. I love all of you.
But his gospel started to change when he was in prison. He stopped allowing marriages, told his followers they could not have babies, and it confused many people. This kind of fractured the community. Some stuck by his side, while others began to question their prophet's new beliefs. This is where Sam Bateman comes in. In 2019, he claims that Warren Jeffs is no longer anointed by God, and that he's receiving visions instead. This fractures the community, some still believing in Warren, and some questioning his beliefs around the halt of procreation. That's when his system of taking young women and girls under manipulative coercion began. He couldn't operate alone, and he relied on the loyalty of his followers to bankroll the operation and help him keep it under wraps. In Netflix's documentary Trust Me, we're introduced to 3 key male players in Sam's cult. Liddell Bislane Jr., a father within the community who gives 2 of his daughters, ages 9 and 11, to Bateman. Moroni Johnson, a member of the FLDS community, but also a member of normal working society. He's a COO of a company making well over 6 figures, but for some reason he gives his wife and 4 of his daughters to Bateman. Torrance Bislin, another follower in Bateman's circle, was there to help provide transportation, and he provided a fleet of luxury vehicles for the group to move around in. These men knew what they were doing, and they knew the places where this behavior would be acceptable, so they were able to stay under the radar for many years. Part of why this case even came to light was access. Filmmaker and cult expert Christine Marie, along with her husband Tolga, in bed with the group. They fed into Sam Bateman's ego long enough to convince him that they should be recording some of the ongoings happening in the group, because of, how spiritually enlightening they were. The video evidence they collected over the course of a year allowed the FBI to finally step in. But when Sam was pulled over in 2022, the FBI's investigation is well underway. Bateman just kind of sped things up by getting himself pulled over with the girls in the back of the trailer. Today, Sam Bateman, many of his followers, and some of his wives are incarcerated. You can watch the whole thing unfold in Netflix's Trust Me, but there's a few things they don't cover that I'd really like to get into here. First is that the cops in FLDS communities have kind of always been in on it. I'm seeing a lot of people online question why the local police didn't jump on Christine and Tolga's evidence way sooner, but it doesn't really surprise me. A piece of this that's easy to miss is how much control FLDS leaders had over the community at large, including law enforcement. In towns like Colorado City, Arizona, and Hilldale, Utah, aka Short Creek, FLDS leaders do have quite a say over law enforcement, at least under Warren Jeff's reign. I'm not accusing the police department of anything, but there's documented evidence that under Warren Jeff's reign, law enforcement may have been enforcing more than just state law. They were also enforcing the profits rules, monitoring behavior, reporting back on members, and in some cases, targeting those who weren't complying. There are accounts of officers pulling teenagers over for minor violations and then documenting things like the music they're listening to and reporting that back to the community. I don't know if any of that continued after Jeffs was jailed in 2011, but considering how much of Jeff's teachings remained in the community for so many years after his incarceration, I can't help but wonder if that culture influenced the police's response to this information at all. Something else that's interesting is that Sam's own father left the church a long time ago. One of the chilling details that Netflix doesn't fully sit with is that Sam Bateman's father tried to take his family out of FLDS and failed. Bateman's father, Deloy Bateman, was born into the community just like Sam, but when Warren Jeffs asked if he could take his daughters as church property, Deloy refused and was exiled from the church. Deloy was able to convince 14 of his children to leave with him, but 3 of his oldest remain loyal to Warren Jeffs, Sam Bateman included. Sam's father is quoted in People magazine saying, "They," meaning his children, "can never see me again. What's the difference between that and death?" Something else we're not talking about is the FLDS Lost Boys. The FLDS system doesn't just control young women, it also controls young men. In a plural marriage system, if the men are expected to have multiple wives, the math starts to become a problem. Too many boys and too much competition. So it's reported that up to 1,000 teenage boys were forcibly exiled from the FLDS community and essentially put out on the street, some as young as age 13. These lost boys often end up homeless on the street, or dozens of them packed in low-rent apartments that they affectionately call butt huts while they're looking for work. This is not a side effect. It's how the system operates to protect itself, isolate young girls, kick out young boys, and focus their energies around uplifting men that they deem to be the chosen ones, aka the ones that seem like they're gonna go along with this freak system. Something else I feel that was left out of the documentary was that Sam and Maroney had a sexual relationship. I'm not bringing this up to sensationalize 2 consenting adults having sex, but I do think it's interesting the power dynamic Sam had at play. He was very publicly enforcing this strict, gendered, cultural marriage system to all of his followers. But behind closed doors, he had an even more complicated power dynamic going on. And personally, I don't know if this helps me understand Maroney's psychology better or not. I could never really quite grasp why a grown man well into his 40s, making a 6-figure salary, would just hand over his wife, his children, and his money to some stranger claiming that he's hearing the voice of God. And something else I wanted to bring up was the sentencing disparity between Bateman and his followers. Sam Bateman was sentenced to 50 years in prison, and since he was incarcerated at age 48, we can assume he may spend the rest of his life in jail, although it wasn't formally handed to him that way because he accepted a plea deal. Maroney Johnson got 25 years for his involvement in the trafficking, and Torrance Bisling got 35. But Liddell Bisling Jr. was the only one actually handed a life sentence. The reason is a legal technicality, not moral. Bateman accepted a plea deal in order to avoid the life sentence. Others were convicted or sentenced based on specific actions that the prosecutors could prove they were involved with and or inflicted on their own wives or their own daughters. Whether they chose to go to trial also has an effect, because believe it or not, you do have that choice in the legal system. And something else I think is so crazy is that Christine and her husband Tolga are still helping the survivors of Sam's following today. I'll put a link in the comments below to some of her fundraising efforts, but it just truly proves that this is not a documentary to her. Christine and Tolga weren't recording events that happened already. They were actively inside an event that was unfolding and continue to stay embedded to this day. While many of Sam's wives have reported an optimistic outlook, leaving the church and moving forward in their own paths today, a lot of the women still stay dedicated Samuelites, as they call themselves. Even with Sam still in jail, they consider him a martyr. The Salt Lake Tribune recently published some of the questions the Samuelites wrote to Bateman while in jail, courtesy of the FBI. And frankly, reading them is a bit shocking once you know what really happened within the group, but I guess it just goes to show you how challenging it is to break out of that cycle once you've been trapped and manipulated the way Sam manipulated his followers in the community. If you, or anyone else you know, may be a victim of coercion or cult-like behavior, I'm also going to post some resources below, and I'll be keeping up with this case if any more developments arise, including when the other women get out of jail. So stay weird, stay aware, and stay safe, and don't forget to subscribe to Crimevine.